On the early hours of December 18th, 2025, in the home in Clyde, North Melbourne, an altercation was occurring due to a disagreement between the house's residents, two of which being 29-year-old Jessica and 44-year-old Stuart. Witnesses have stated that Jessica and Stuart had gone into a verbal and even physical altercation from the topic of their children, as both of them were parents to their daughters. Their altercation soon took a turn for the tragic, as the home would be set alight with only the 46-year-old woman and her 11-year-old daughter, alongside Jessica's dog, managing to escape unharmed. As for Jessica, Stuart and Michael, however, they would be drastically injured from the fire, and tragically one would pass away not long after. This night was devastating to all those involved, even to those who were not even present at the time. Not only would this mark the end of one's life, it would also mark the end to a well-known game developer in a community with thousands, even millions of followers. Jessica, also known as CorpseSyndrome, is the core of this case that ended in tragedy, leaving her own daughter without her mother, and leaving Stuart's daughter without her father. I was taken into TeamAri as a writer, with Jessica herself approaching me due to the stories I'd written for the game. With this, I was involved in the private chat on Discord and was notified alongside the other devs when the incident had first been shared by Ognik. I've been following the Music Box and CorpseSyndrome for years now and had been witness to some of the events that had occurred. I will mostly been speaking from my own memory and experience, so please let me know if there is any misconceptions or misinformation in this video. Jessica, known online at the time as Mari's Friend 9, was an artist that started out on Flipnote, Hatina and DeviantArt, creating animations in her own anime art style around 2012. She was a wife to Chloe, also known as Ognik, and had a daughter she named Naomi. She was well known in her animations on video game characters and, as her name suggests, Super Mario. Not only did she make Mario flip notes, but her animations also had a specific edge to them, showing Mario and the other characters in horror-like scenarios, especially with some animations based on the YouTube series Power Star, revolving around the Boos possessing Mario and making him murder all the residents of the Mushroom Kingdom violently, especially Princess Peach and Luigi. These ideas of Mario being possessed and committing horrific acts would inspire Jessica to create her own game that she started to develop around 2014 to 2015. A game that would later gather a massive following thanks to the influences of Luigi Kid and others at the time, Mario the Music Box. Mario the Music Box was a game created in RPG Maker, which took inspiration from other well-known RPG Maker horror games of the time like Corpse Party, Mad Father, and The Witch's House. The game revolved around puzzles, survival, and was well known for its CGs and the unique concept at the time of incorporating Mario into a horror environment. Jessica, alongside the newly created team of developers called TeamAri, created this game to incorporate Jessica's combined interests of Mario and horror, placing him into a game where he'd be possessed by a murderous spirit within the haunted mansion, alongside all the other countless ways both he and Luigi could meet their ends within the setting. However, it wasn't only her interest that spawned the inspiration to make this game. Originally, this game was never even supposed to be released to the public with its personal ties to Jessica as a person. Originally, this game was nothing more than a vent to Jessica to use, due to her dealing with heavy mental health issues at the time, and even to this very day. Jessica was prone to mental illness, especially with her depression and suicidal ideations. By incorporating her favourite character into a horror game that allows her to pour all her emotions and mental turmoil into one game, she saw a way of coping with her issues, while also bringing her ideas and interests to life. Later in its development, however, she would eventually release a demo to the public for anyone to play if they so desired. This game may not have garnered much attention at the time, if it weren't for the YouTubers who played it and showcased it to their viewers, such as Luigi Kid, Lynx4, Space Hamster, and Taste Gaming. Renee, aka Luigi Kid, especially gave the game popularity due to his own interest in the Mario franchise, and would later become close friends with Jessica and the other devs of TeamAri, promoting the game while gaining more traction to his own channel. Later on, the full game would release, and despite its smaller following, would truly become loved by the horror and Mario community for its unique concept and artwork, even going on to inspire multiple other artists and content creators in their own artworks. Soon enough, the game would go on to extend its lore and in its sequel, Mario the Music Box Arc, and would further expand on it in the remakes of the first game and DLCs, all with even more deaths and endings. Another game at the time of Arc, which was its indirect sequel, would have been called Mario and the Pocket Watch, later renamed to Mario Echoes Through Time, but this was later scrapped. The concept of this game was going to be an original concept that starred one of the characters of Arc as foreshadowed in Arc's plot and an ending alluding to the game that never came to be. The DLCs of Ark included extensions inspired by Undertale and Wonderland, with the Wonderland update being the most notable in its lore implications and content that would even gain its own following for the DLC alone. The remake of the original Mario the Music Box would update the lore following Ark and would create all the art for the original 2015 release, as well as leading into the revamp of Ark, which would later be cancelled in favour of a full remake of both games called Mario the Music Box Reset, which was being worked on up to the present day and is still not released. The game would gain a huge following over the years, with more YouTubers talking about it, more devs being added to TeamAri, more fanworks being made, and would have even had the chance to star in other Mario projects like the popular Friday Night Funkin' mod, Mario's Madness, that incorporates other Mario works within the community in each version. Mario the Music Box was considered to be in the upcoming version of Mario's Madness upon popular request from the fandom, but this would ultimately be scrapped due to the recent events that this video is about. On the topic of this, it's about the time to dive back into the developer herself, Jessica, as, despite the popularity of her game and how beloved she and TeamAri are, her mental health was still deteriorating each and every day. There were multiple instances of Jessica making attempts on her own life, with one of her recent attempts being around June 2020. However, this would be a turning point for Jessica, as her wife Chloe, known online as Ognik, would decide to separate from her and would also lead to Jessica being institutionalized and temporarily homeless for the time being, as Chloe wanted Jessica to get the help she needed while taking care of their daughter and prioritizing her. Chloe was always the one to be there for Jess during her worst times and has seen the effects of her mental illness during every instance, especially during Jess's multiple attempts on her life, which led to her decision for the two to separate in the hopes of Jess getting the help she needed and making time for herself and her mental health. Unfortunately, this would not be the case. With Jess not living with Chloe anymore, she would eventually find her home within Clyde North, sharing the home with the four other residents, those being Stuart, Michael, a mother, and her 11-year-old daughter, as well as Jessica's support dog. At this time, things had seemed to have been going smoothly for Jess and TeamAri, as they were continuing the game's development and releasing promo material for the original game's 10th anniversary, but not all of the information was made public for what was really happening outside of Discord. Jessica was supposedly not getting along with her housemates, and her mental health was not improving much either. It may have been assumed that Jessica and her housemates would get into arguments every now and then with the incident that had occurred, but I'm not certain if there is any proof of this assumption. However, this would all come to pass near the end of 2025, only a couple days before Christmas, where at this very home, the tragedy had taken place that would change everything. It was the early hours of the 18th of December in the Clyde North home. Everyone mentioned previously was in the home when an altercation broke out between the housemates, specifically Jessica and Stuart. A neighbour at the time witnessed one of the men, Michael or Stuart, kicking Jessica on the front lawn while screaming out her anger, that led to the police being called from the domestic dispute.
I was trying to ask for help, and then I just hear getting beaten down on the floor. He was pretty much kicking her in the ribs on the ground. Pretty much saying like, oh, how could you do this? Something along those lines.
This would not be the end of it, however, as witnesses at the time would see the house go up in flames with only the 11-year-old girl, Jessica's dog, and the girl's mother escaping the flames, while Jessica, Stuart, and Michael were gravely injured and later recovered by ambulances. After a few days of investigations and questioning, as well as a confession from Jess, the situation, while still mostly alleged, was becoming clear to the police. On the night of the incident, Jessica and Stuart had gotten into a verbal altercation, which is alleged to have stemmed from her getting angry at Stuart for not cleaning up after himself. This would soon devolve into a heated argument between them regarding their children, which seemed to have come to the point where Stuart allegedly telling Jess something along the lines of, "At least I have a daughter." This is said to be the point where Jess had thrown a flammable liquid over Stuart, likely being some sort of alcohol or accelerant, and lighting him up ablaze with a lighter that she had claimed to have not known she was holding. This would lead to the house going up in flames, with Jessica and Stuart and Michael being severely injured. Jessica and Michael, while in dire condition, are recovering and are now in stable condition. However, the same cannot be said for Stuart. He would be airlifted to the hospital due to his critical condition and tragically would not survive upon reaching the hospital. It is said by Chloe that while Jess was in police custody before she even knew Stuart had passed away, that she had been attempting to justify herself and her actions despite the severity, which has led to the speculation that this may not have simply been due to insanity and was not an accident or a case of manslaughter. With this, Jessica would later be taken to court where she would be charged with the fire and the murder of Stuart, as well as another charge of attempted murder and property damage. As of today, no new information has been released and Jessica is due to have a court hearing in May of this year. As I said before, I was one of the devs that had been in the Discord's private chat with the other devs when Chloe had first told us about the incident. There was a lot of dysfunction from this, however, as Chloe had made a decision to keep this information private until more information presented itself. This was only a couple days after the incident, so there was still so much to speculate and would have only caused confusion and panic among the members of the Discord server. However, one of the server members would leak the information from the incorrect notion that the devs were trying to hide this incident and cover it for Jessica, which was far from the case. The member I will refer to as Teddy has leaked the information in and even outside the Discord server and would create a Google Doc on X detailing the incident in full without Chloe's consent. This Google Doc paints TeamAri in a negative light and has many misconceptions and slanderous material, so it's likely best to not engage with this doc and go to the official TeamAri Discord, as well as the news articles I've linked in the description for more details. All in all, Chloe would eventually release her full statement to the Discord server and make everyone aware of the incident, as well as what it means for the game. The ownership of this server has been transferred, and it's said that the devs may attempt to recreate Mario the Music Box without any assets or CGs made by CorpseSyndrome to eliminate any ties between her and the game. The Daughters of Stuart have created a GoFundMe following his passing to pay for his memorial, so please help them out when you have the chance. Link will be in the description. Many videos have been made regarding the incident, however most of these have been taken from Teddy's Google Doc, so I'd recommend watching Luigi Kid's video for a more informative look in the situation. Please also show your support to the devs at TeamAri, as this whole situation has been difficult for them and the rest of the fandom to deal with. My heart mostly goes out to the victims of this case, especially Stuart, his daughters, and Jessica's daughter in turn. It is devastating for this to have occurred from someone who had been following this game since the first version released, alongside many others in the fandom and the server who share the same love for the game as I do. Even though I may not be as involved as the more prominent members of TeamAri, I want to make it very clear from my own experiences that the devs are in no way condoning Jessica's actions and had no plans at all to keep this information private indefinitely in an attempt to cover up. They were all in shock at the incident and wanted to wait until more information came to light and be able to share the full story. With the relinquishment of ownership of the server, as well as the game itself, Jessica is no longer tied to the game officially, and it should be viewed with all the years of hard work put in by the devs, as well as what they may plan for it in the future. This may leave a permanent mark on the game as a whole, but it doesn't mean the devs' efforts and talent should go to waste, especially with how far Mario the Music Box has come. Whatever the team decide to do next, I will respect and accept wholeheartedly. Thank you for watching this far, and thank you TeamAri for all you've done through this incident.